Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I'm 12 Kyle. Check this out. On this episode, what I want to talk about is hip hop. More specifically, a list that I came across. Shout out to my homegirl Tiff Jones, aka Smarty Jones, Smartay, who's actually been on the podcast a couple of times. She posted this thing that had been, I guess, circulating around the internet um, a couple of weeks ago. I saw it. I just took a screenshot of it. It's one of those things where they ask you your favorites, so forth and so on, and then they want you to, document who your favorites are or aren't, and cut and paste it and post it, repost it, and then tag other hip hop fans and have them do the same. Well, if you know me, I'm not participating in anything like that. But uh, what I did want to do was I actually did want to participate in it, but I wanted to do it in my way as far as putting it on the podcast and not in a Facebook post. Um, and it's just favorites. It's favorites. It's favorites. It's favorites. It's my personal favorites. So here's the thing about favorites, and I really shouldn't have to explain this, but I'm going to explain it anyway. Um, if you've heard any podcast with me and my man Eclectic, shout out to E, we always talk about how, like, you never argue with anybody about their favorites. So, like, if I said that my favorite MC of all time is Young MC, you can't argue that. That's my personal favorite. It ain't yours. I didn't say he was the GOAT. I said my favorite MC is Young MC. You can't argue that, King Germ. Stop laughing, Baylor. I hear you. Nonetheless, you don't argue with people about their favorites. Favorites are subjective. From time to time on this podcast, you've seen me post like my favorite TV shows, or favorite top 10 this, or favorite 5 this. That's all subjective, but it's mine. So again, I'm only saying this because I don't want anybody in the comment section saying, I can't believe you picked such and such as your favorite. It's my favorite. The great thing about this list is that you have the opportunity to do your own favorites and post it on your Twitter page, or post it on your Facebook account, or even better, you could make a podcast for it. In fact, I would love to hear a podcast from King Germ from the Frocast, my man Baylor, um, D Murph. I mean, everybody, all the cats that I listen to, especially those of you who are hip hop heads. And I don't want to start naming names because I know I'll forget some people. But and you don't have to have a podcast. But I would love to hear a podcast from some of my favorite hip hop heads who are podcasters. And of course, he's doing this joint with his favorites already. So, and I even thought about, when I saw this list, I thought about possibly bringing like a conglomerate of my favorite podcasters and us doing it all together. But since it's, I don't know, 7 o'clock on a Saturday night, and I figured that these cats and ladies are in the streets, it's probably best that I do this one by myself. Nonetheless, here's my list, my hip hop list, and it's bigger than hip hop. Greatest rapper of all time. I'm just going to go down the list. First up, greatest rapper of all time. My opinion, it's the God MC. Rakim Allah. Not much to say after that. Favorite rapper of all time. Now, there's a difference between greatest and favorite. I really don't have to tell you this, but I'm telling you anyway. My favorite is probably Nas. Um, yeah, it's probably Nas. Hove is probably a close second, maybe. But yeah, it's probably Nas. Um, and before I go on, let me just explain something. As I looked at this list, I was like, okay, I can knock this out. Cool. It'll be pretty relatively easy. And it wasn't as easy as I thought it would be, honestly, because when you start talking about favorites, um, you know, sometimes you got to stop and think. Next up, favorite current rapper. Okay, favorite current rapper. I'm gonna go, and here's the cool thing about this list. It said favorite current rapper, but it does not exclude you from adding rappers. So if you want to do more than one, I didn't see anything on here that said you had to have one. So with that being said, um, favorite current rappers. I'm gonna say Kendrick Lamar and Fonte from Little Brother. That's right. If you don't know Fonte, get familiar. Hmm. Um, Next up, favorite female rapper. In this case, I will say favorite female rappers. That would be none other than MC Light and the Queen. All hail the Queen, Queen Latifah. Um, yeah, I had to go with those two. Again, shout out to Eclectic who says I hate women, which is not true. I love women. Um, I love women a lot. And I love my women, my female MCs too. So that goes without saying. But yeah, my favorite female rappers, uh, MC Light and Queen Latifah. Okay, this one is where it got tricky for me. Favorite rap group. I'll be honest, I could not pick just one rap group. Now, rap groups really don't exist at this point at the time of this recording in 2022. However, if you're a seasoned hip hop fan such as I, and you go way back with hip hop, you do remember a time where there were hip hop crews, and more specifically, there were hip hop groups. So, with that being said, let me give you my favorite rap groups. This was not easy. Okay, I'm gonna stop filibustering. Let me go ahead and get to it. And in no particular order, I'm going off the top. Run DMC, Public Enemy, um, definitely A Tribe Called Quest, NWA. Oh, shit. Outcast and the Roots. So that's one, two, three, four, five, six. So that's six. I have six favorite rap groups. Honestly, if you know me, I cannot break it down into one group. I just can't. There's no need me trying, I'm thinking that there may be some favorite rap groups on the fringe, right on the outside, but probably those that I just named. And I just had to write them down: Run DMC, PE, Tribe Called Quest, NWA, um, Outkast, and the Roots. Yeah, those are my favorites. Uh, Favorite trap rapper. This was interesting because I don't listen to a lot of trap rap, particularly definitely not a lot of the current trap rap. So my trap rap goes back a little bit and then it stops, and it probably stops with my favorite, and that would be the Snowman. ATL's own Jeezy, the Snowman, Young Jeezy, whatever you want to call him. Yeah, that's probably my favorite. Shout out to TM 101. Um, Oh, the next category, favorite rapper under 30. That's easy. There would be none. I can't honestly say that I have a favorite rapper under 30. I know that there are some that are pretty good that exist, but I can't tell you that there are a lot of under 30, year old rappers that I listen to. Um, I like Corday. He's got some joints. Um, but I'm not going to sit here and tell you that he's my favorite because I don't. I To give off the impression that I have a favorite under 30, I'd have to tell you that I listen to a lot that are under 30, and I haven't. Um, it is what it is. Favorite next category, favorite storytelling lyricist. Um, this one's tough. Because there's a couple of different ways I could go, but if I'm gonna go with a favorite, I'd probably say KRS-One. Um, KRS-One could tell a story like right now. Like he could tell a story about your outfit, whatever you got on. Uh, and I think that is definitely a lost art because nobody tells stories. I don't want to say nobody, but MCs, rappers don't really tell stories the way they once did. Um, and it's unfortunate because I think one of the things that you want to do as a rapper, as an MC, as a lyricist, you want to give a great story rhyme or story rhymes uh, that show off your lyrical ability. I mean, anybody could rap about selling drugs or killing people or whatever the case may be, or banging 30 chicks at the same time. But to be able to just tell a story, have a beginning, a middle, and an ending, everybody can't do that well, and that's probably why it doesn't happen as much now. But if I had to have a favorite, I'd probably say Chris Parker. Definitely KRS-One. Um, Most underrated. Oh, that's easy for me. Redman. Redman, very, I mean, criminally underrated. And what I mean by that is like, no, he's not underrated like uh, a Fonte or I don't know, somebody like a Lupe Fiasco or somebody like that. But I think like the masses don't know who Redman is the way that they should. For as talented as he is and as dope as he is, I probably Fonte probably be a close second, but most underrated, I probably definitely say Redman. As far as underrated, as far as his skill set and being known and being worldwide, like he probably should be. Um, Most overrated, oh that's easy, Drake for me. Drake is a great rap artist. Period. He is a very extremely popular rap artist. Period. But Drake to me is very overrated. Like I don't know how people made Drake the hottest dude in the game, but he's been the hottest dude in the game probably for the last, I don't know, 7, 8 years, maybe longer than that. But nah, man, I have no desire to sit and listen to a Drake album or a Drake song. Um, that being said, I understand why the people who listen to Drake, I understand why you listen. I understand why he's as popular as he is. He's good at what he does, very good, but he's very overrated. Extremely overrated. Now, if you go back to, I know some of you probably think, well, do you even listen to Drake? There was a time like before Drake really, really blew, like early in his career, I would listen to his stuff. I mean, like he had some banging joints and joints that I will still play to this day. But once things kind of took off for him, and it just nah, just overrated. Um, this next category was extremely hard. Favorite producer. So I had to make it producers. Uh, because these three are my favorite in no particular order. James DeWitt Yancey, aka Jay Dilla, DJ Premier, and Dr. Dre. I think all three of those gentlemen, their music and what they've been able to produce and give to their rap fans, it goes without saying. But for me, the three of them make time and have made timeless music. And when I listen to it, like I get a certain feel. Like I get a certain feel when a Dilla beat comes on. I've used Jay Dilla instrumentals all throughout this podcast over the years, and I'll continue to do so. I love that dude. Miss him tremendously. DJ Premier, I mean, that's a whole mood, a whole vibe in and of itself. And he's so good at what he does. Like he can switch things up, whether or not it's rocking with a singer or the most hardest of hardcore rappers. Um, and then obviously Dr. Dre. Dr. Dre is phenomenal, and has been really since day one. Their contributions to hip hop have been well documented, and they deserve every flower that you can throw at them. Next category: favorite rap album of all time. Pretty easy for me. It's an album that I think is the best album of all time, and that would be Eric B. and Rakim's Paid in Full. Eclectic and I did a podcast episode on that. Go back and check that one out. Really, really dope. Love that album. Still bump it. Will forever bump it. Which actually leads me into the next category: favorite rap song. One of my favorite, but probably my favorite rap song appears on that favorite rap album. Duh. And it is entitled My Melody from Eric B. and Rakim. I mean, that was pretty easy. That was pretty easy. Next category: favorite rap duo. This was easy. I'm gonna stay here in my hometown of Atlanta, GA. Outcast. Uh, Outcast, I think, far exceeds any expectations that I had of them. And they seeing their evolution and what they've become over the years. I mean, it goes without saying. Again, my favorite rap duo. What's interesting is if you've been following me, you heard the podcast that Eclectic and I did, where we broke down Rolling Stone list of the greatest 200 albums, hip hop albums of all time. And obviously, what came as a surprise to me was that sitting at number 2, was Outkast's album Stankonia, which is a very, very, very good album. However, it's not even Outkast's best album. I conclude that it's Outkast's 4th best album. People love a Stankonia, and rightfully so, but it's not. It can't be in the top 10 of hip hop albums if it's not Outkast's best album, and it's not even close to being Outkast's best album. But it's an album that crossed over, and a lot of people love it, so it's whatever. But anyway, middle finger to Rolling Stone. Favorite posse cut. This one was easy for me. It's The Symphony from Marley Marl. Juice Crew, Legends. If you're not familiar with that song, please go play it after you stop listening to this podcast. Incredible. Still bumps to this day. Next category: favorite female rap album. Now, this one was a little bit difficult for me not because I hate women. Again, Eclectic is wrong for saying that. But it said favorite. So when I started thinking about my favorites, I'm like, okay, well, what female rap album do I listen to? And I just keep going back to over and over and over again. And Hot, Cool, and Vicious was up there because that was like probably the first female album that I just fell in love with. And I remember having the tape, and I played that tape literally until it popped by Salt and Pepper. But I'd have to say the one that's probably my favorite that I never grow tired of listening to, that I still listen to this day, that's Layla's Wisdom from Rhapsody. I mean, I don't know what to tell you. That album is flawless to me. It is a strong 4.5 mic album. Again, it's one that I bump all the time. I love Rhapsody. who is also a very underrated MC as well. She could easily fit on that most underrated list. And then the last category, last but not least, favorite featured verse. Now, if you've been following the podcast and following me, you know that Eclectic and I did a podcast episode on guest verses. However, the best, my favorite featured verse is AZ's verse on the album Illmatic. The song is entitled Life's a Bitch, and AZ's verse is a killer. And there you have it. Listen, again, I would encourage each of you to do what I just did. You got the categories. If you want me to, I can, shoot them to you without my answers on it. And if you're a podcaster, like I said, Baylor, Eclectic, King Germ, D Murph, anybody that's listening to this who's a hip hop head, check, make a podcast. You don't have to do it tomorrow, but I would love to hear what you had to say about this. And if you're listening to this podcast and you just want to make a list, screenshot it, shoot it to me on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, what have you. I would enjoy that as well. But that's going to do it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hey, I want to give you a little secret. This podcast is called It's Bigger Than Hip Hop. Well, guess what? The next podcast, which will be a bonus episode, is going to be called It's Bigger Than Hoops, where I'm going to give you the same type of categories, but we're talking basketball. If you're following the podcast, that'll drop in a few days. If you catch this podcast later, it's the podcast right behind this one. So be on the lookout for that. But that's going to do it for me. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000.